Hello and welcome to the Advertising Are You Too Late When It Comes to Diversity and Inclusion panel that the Drum is hosting in partnership with Adobe. My name is Sonu Singh, and today I have got two brilliant women from the industry to talk just about that. I have Yolanda Hainsworth from Grey Health and Wellness and Meg Moss from Adobe. Welcome both. How are you?
Good, thank you, Sonu.
Yes, same here. Doing well. Thanks, Sonu.
Good. So let's start with you, Yolanda. Black Lives Matter. We are obviously approaching the Black History Month next month in October. Mm-hmm. After all the conversations into the number of signatures that people have put their names to, do you think the advertising industry is living up to some of its promise? What is your assessment of the industry response to BLM till date?
I mean, so far, I think we're way behind and it's a slow start, but for me, it was expected. Like, there's just so much to debunk and try to really get into to accomplish. People just have to have those expectations. You can't jump right into it. What I've been seeing is that some people do think that they can do that. And then you kind of have to set some bit of the reality, because we have only scratched the surface in terms of what we truly need to do. So far, what I have seen is that the acknowledgements of some of the contributions are there. The commitments and the pledges are happening. As you move forward with the next steps, I truly don't think people know what to do or organizations know what to do. So they have to then ask for assistance to start creating something. So it's been pretty slow from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I would quite concur with you, Meg. I want to also understand from the point of view. Obviously, we'll come to something as individual that we are facing and trying to learn during this time as well. But also, we've been hearing some really good things about Adobe, for instance. So there's certain organizations which seem to be, that slightly ahead of the curve. And to Yolanda's point, yes, we have been talking about this for far too long. But where do you think that responsibility lies when we talk about something like Black Lives Matter? I mean, how, not just the industry, but business leaders, how have they been responding to this?
Yeah. To your point, I've been at Adobe for 2.5 years, and I can hand on heart say I feel like they're a company that really do live up to what they say. I think to Yolanda's point, we're all learning. Like, we're learning on personal levels, we're learning on business levels, we're learning on creator levels of what to do and how to do. And I think change has to be embraced from the top, but I think it has to come from across the board. I think everybody has to be involved in that change. And Adobe has had some amazing initiatives. So one that each week we have an all hands for the whole company, and that one of those is a Diverse Voices program, where we hear from somebody within the company who's living, breathing their own experience and gets to share that with everybody. And it's a game changer. There's thousands of people in the chat, and I think that's been such a great initiative for all of us. But I think also, to Yolanda's point, I don't think we're too late, but I think we're late. I don't think it's ever too late. Like, we have to embrace this and we have to make change. But yes, we're late. We're years late, we're decades late. But hopefully with a lot of listening and a lot of learning, we will get there.
Yolanda, that's quite a pertinent point, isn't it? What are the kind of voices that we're giving space to? But also, how much, not just that, how much are we empowering them to actually talk about what is missing in that conversation? And not just that, how safe do they think those voices which were never heard to actually talk about addressing some of the issues that go right through the heart and core of this conversation?
I think it's an excellent point. So what you've had in the dynamic that's happening, lots of fear involved, and it's fear from both sides. So as we talk more and more about diversity, which I have my own viewpoints on that and the use of the word as a catch-all, but as we talk more and more about that and the need for things to happen, there's still just that trepidation about really getting into it. You have the white colleagues that just fear going into it. And it's kind of like, I don't know what the right thing to say. I really don't know how to approach this. And it's just like, that's not going to get us anywhere. Then you have from the other side, if there is an agency that does have non-whites in good positions or just in the agency at all, they're fearful of speaking up because for years on end, they have been conditioned to figure out the right way to play the line where they don't get in enough of a situation that's going to be a bad situation for them. So when it's that fear from both sides that's stopping the dialogue, it's kind of like, where do we go? So to your point, Sanu, what are we doing to increase that comfort? And at Gray, health and wellness, the great thing, particularly for Gray, we actually have a lot of diversity. So I love that. And to Meg's point, we've been able to really quickly organize our teams and build some new structures, help facilitate and cultivate that comfort from people to really feel like you have a place where you can speak up. And once you start to do that, we've started to really see like the eyes opening in terms of how much people just don't know. I mean, we're working in an industry, particularly where we are, for healthcare advertising, and people just don't know about some of these huge events that's happened to Black people that has created and contributed to mistrust. And I'm just like blown that just historically. But if you think of how we were raised in school, that's not the narrative that we were given. So that's what I mean when we're talking about way behind. We have to get through all of that just in terms of understanding some of the mindsets of more of the people of color in the agency.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if we were to start talking about healthcare and biases, I mean, that's a whole another conversation, and not just one chapter, but several chapters that we could be debating on, because you know, then you can go into sort of the biases and the algorithms that persist, and yes, you're quite right, Yolanda. It's so fundamental, you know, not just microaggressions, but it's kind of those built-in cultural nuances. I just wonder, and for both of you, you know, you are an agency, Meg, as a technology platform giant as well. Do you think that some kind of fundamental, substantial change could come with this industry collaboration, but with brands at the heart of it? If brands were to sort of give that real push to their agencies, to the platform partners, technology partners, then that kind of, you know, then a movement would start building. What do you both think about that?
Do you want to go first, Yolanda?
I mean, sure. I definitely think that is needed. What we see now, and I'll get back to the diversity now being used as the catch-all,
Well, please.
which just like gets us to this point of like, let me check off that I've showed some form of visual representation of a race and you know, some ethnicity in our pieces. We have to go deeper than that. Yeah. But the driver is the brands and how these things are coming in from the clients and how the budgets are set up. Because if you don't give us that freedom, that is what you're going to get. And it's very challenging. And the reason why I say I have issues with the language around diversity, because it doesn't give us the opportunity to really dig into the lived experiences of every single one of these communities. It's just very surface level, as I mentioned, of here's the check off. But if brands truly put it behind them to make, you know, to change the narrative, it will do a lot. Like the advertising is what people, we know how we shape, you know, people's behaviors and their attitudes and their thinking. So the brands could definitely do a lot to contribute to this, to change things.
Meg, what do you think then?
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you know, Yolanda touched on something earlier. We're at a real surface level at the moment. And I certainly don't have the insight enough into what's happening in the boardrooms or the virtual Zoom rooms at the moment to know how systemic this is. The thing I take hope from is that the fear of doing something or the fear of not doing something is it's starting to outweigh the fear of doing something. And I think the longer this conversation can stay high level, and there's no ignoring the fact that it should never have had to be what it is for this to be the topic, and to move diversity and inclusion from a buzzword to an action word. But I hope and trust that this is as much or enough of a movement and enough of a trigger for brands to shift from that safe zone. We'll just do a little bit, or we'll just check that box that Yolanda said. We'll just make sure we've got enough in there so we don't get called out, to really making systemic changes. And I really am encouraged by the amount of brands and companies that are reaching out to us saying, hey, we've said we're going to do this and we need help to make sure we live up to that. This is the first time in my career that I've come across that. So I'm, if nothing else, I'm encouraged.
Yeah. Are those the kind of conversations you're having as well, Yolanda? Is it where brands, obviously, you know, they've been caught between the headlights and they don't quite know what to do? So are you having those encouraging conversations?
I would agree with that, Meg. And it's encouraging to me too, for them to step up and say, like, we're getting this now and understanding how deep it is, and we need your help to try to get us to truly create some lasting change. So it's good to hear, it's good to see. We just need some understanding that it is not going to be fast. And why I stress the understanding is because we have this movement that we go through all the time where we put dollar signs first, and that can't be. We truly have to put the patients first. So from the companies, they have to understand there has to be a little bit more investment so that you can connect with these communities before you can try to drill in and start talking more on product level, because it's just not going to work. There's just so much and so many barriers that you have to get over before you can truly address the needs.
So can I just sort of unpick the whole diversity, the word itself, and I'll be interested to hear what both of you think. I mean, do you think, because first of all, as women, and no, I'm not conflating the two issues at all, but as women, we know what being part of minority group feels anyway. But obviously with Black Lives Matter, now the focus needs to be that, because we've seen not just the systemic racism that exists, but also what the unfortunate impact of that. So do you think, well, first of all, we need to look at the kind of language and therefore look at inclusion rather than diversity, which then, we have one person, we have, whether it's, sitting around the table in an ad, but inclusion takes it to a whole different level.
Yeah, and I solely agree with that. And the way we talk at Great Health and Wellness, many people speak of diversity first, we talk inclusion first, because if you are truly inclusive, everything else will follow. It is hard and it's not as if it's not needed. So when you speak about diversity, I think what happens is the same dynamics that we've seen with Black Lives Matter, where you have all of this controversial battering around it, which is all lives matter, it's Black Lives Matter. There's always this desire to expand it, where you start to lose context on the reason why it came into existence in the first place. Another set of language that I will speak about is microaggressions. I've started to hear that word just so widely used that you lose the context of why it came into existence. And I think we do the same thing with diversity. It serves a purpose, but there are some times where you just have to get a little deeper so that you can ensure that you are addressing the needs of the target that you are really trying to focus on. It cannot just be diverse as a holistic thing. So there are several meetings that I sit in, and I truly have to ask the question and stop and say, who are we really talking about right now? Because if we're just saying diverse, there's many different communities and populations that we're speaking to, as we just talked about women being one of them. But I truly stop conversations at times to say, who exactly and what population exactly are we talking about? Because every single one has a different experience that they have lived, and you really want to address that. So that is some of the problems that I see when we just say diversity. I think it just becomes, here, let's check that box. And that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Meg, what about you? How do you, within the organization, actually see diversity and inclusion? Are those two different things, or the same thing, or different parts of the same coin?
Yeah, I think we're all at the very beginning with this. I'm getting really comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm the white person in the room. I don't know this story, and I don't know how to tell this story. And the closest I can get to that is trying to have the right people in the room to do that. But we have a big diversity and inclusion broad scope box as well. But I am already starting to see that we're taking action to debunk that and not do that. I was working with an agency who focus on Hispanic communities and how to target Hispanic communities. And out of many conversations with them, also, like, it's not one size fits all. Hispanic is a very nuanced, diverse group of people, and they are not part of the diversity and inclusion catch-all either. As I'm not, as a woman, it needs to be broken out, just as we break out other things, and how we break out ages when we're working out how to communicate to people. We don't just say that there's two ages, there's young and there's old. We really get really targeted about that in our communications. And so how are we going to do that for all of the different segments that we're talking to? It's not a white people and then another bubble of everybody else. We definitely have to get more nuanced, and I don't think we're there yet. I don't think anybody is there yet. But as I said, I just have to trust that this is the beginning of that.
So, Yolanda, can I ask you then, obviously, as Meg has also put it quite rightly, there is no, there's no kind of clear pathway as such, because there is no playbook. We all kind of meandering through this.
Exactly.
And going back to the issue of race, and especially Black Lives Matter, and it is Black History Month in October. And I don't know whether it is frustrating because, you're being asked this as a Black person, and maybe we should have some of the answers. I don't know, but let us know. What should the industry be doing to explore, the issues around race, identity, culture? Because those are quite sort of wrapped in together, aren't they?
They are, and it has to be truly integrated in the everyday at any particular organization. And that's why the focal point is on bringing in these faces, so to speak, because those faces will help you to get a path, to get a roadmap together in terms of figuring it out. Because to your point, and to Meg's point, you haven't lived my life, particularly, I haven't lived her life, so we don't know. And I think Meg is positioning herself in such a wonderful way where she is saying from a very honest place, I don't know. Can you guys come together and help to teach me, help to educate me? And then from there, you have all of these experiences coming together, learning about each other. That's when the something special starts to happen. But you truly need to bring the faces into the organizations, and they have to be at high enough positions where they have authority to create change. Because we tend to get that wrong as well, where it's like, oh, we need to pull some people in. So you get some people in and they end up staying at low levels, or they end up leaving because things just aren't set up in a way to retain them. And nothing truly happens in terms of change because the systems and the structures in place have not changed. And once we can do that, that's when the change happens. But if you're going at it the way that Meg is going at it, and having that comfort with being uncomfortable and people ask what that looks like, I think Meg just gave you a perfect example. It is you admitting to yourself you don't know, and you coming out and asking people to share. The beauty of just a question and asking somebody what their thoughts are, what they've experienced, will bring a lot of awareness to things. And unfortunately, it does not happen on a daily basis where people just don't get asked, because we have, again, this narrative in front of us and this way that we live, which is based off of one particular population. People expect everybody are moving and thinking the same way. Just ask somebody how they're doing. Like, culturally, differences in how we all celebrate holidays, you will learn things. And that's what contributes to change, is when we all start to truly learn. That awareness and that light bulb goes off, and it's just like, wow, okay, so we should get this person on board, or we should do this. And it helps you to start to create your roadmaps.
I would imagine that this is almost kind of one of those rare moments, and this is obviously, is public as well, because it's not just the three of us talking, and audience is watching, and we are all bringing our own sort of fears or discomforts to the table as well, and saying, obviously, none of us know the answers,
Exactly.
and as you said, Yolanda, we don't know each other's experiences, we haven't lived each other's lives. And that to me obviously is very honest, and as I said, quite rare as well, because you do get those probably in one-on-one conversations. I just wonder, when we look at the leaders of our industry, how often do you think they really put themselves in that kind of uncomfortable position? Because surely, everyone talks about, leadership of today need to show some kind of vulnerability, etc. Would you have any kind of advice for both of you to open up to the experiences on that level of sort of leaning into that fear, their own fears, for instance? Yeah. Meg?
Yeah, so from a leadership perspective, our CEO, Shantanu, has lived his own experience, I'm sure. He is not from America originally. And I find this really does come from the top down here. I think he's very cautious and conscious and aware, and Adobe being a great place to work is not something they just talk about. It's actually, they live and breathe it. Sometimes even to my surprise, I'm like, oh, we're really going a long way to this. But what it does is it really breeds a culture. And so I'm not going to lie, I don't have as many options of speaking to a Black colleague and getting their opinion as I do a white colleague. There just is not, as we all know, there's not equity in the workplace. And so I'm limited there already. And how many people can I pull in? Could I get somebody in to have this conversation on the drum today in my place that could speak to this from experience? No. But we're working towards that. And I do really think that comes from the top down. And it also means that I have other people within here that are at least feeling like me and at least open and wanting to be schooled. How do we do this? How do we do this? What should I do to be a part of this and make change in the way that it needs to be made, not how I think it should be made, not how my other white colleagues think it should be made. And I do feel like I'm surrounded by that mindset, which is positive. It's not as positive as if I had an equal group of colleagues, but I feel like I'm in a good environment for learning.
Yeah. What about you, Yolanda? I mean, something that I find as well, talking to enough agency CEOs, for instance, and there's always this ask about how do we make sure that we don't offend anyone in order to even ask the right questions. I mean, does it have to be a right question?
Again, people have to get used to feeling uncomfortable, which means you may want to ask a question that you're uncomfortable with. I think if people know when they hear something, when there's an intent behind it that is wrong, if you are purely asking a question and it's signaling ignorance, then I think it is okay. But if it has something behind it where it's sarcastic or it's this, people will pick it up. But if it's genuine and it's a question, feel free to ask it. From again, at Gray, I would say I am very lucky for the agency that I am in, because which is a rare thing. Our CEO is a Black man, Michael Houston. So I agree, Meg. It comes from top down, and he sets the tone for the entire agency. So that level of comfort, or a level of comfort being uncomfortable, is definitely there. So the questions come out. We all learn more. We all drive, off of those insights. But it definitely has to be a thing from the top down. So our leadership group is involved, and those questions are not afraid to, because we don't have it fully blown, Black people in every single position, but the ones that don't know are there to say, I don't know, but we also have a resource to pull from internally if there are answers that are needed. Because again, I think I mentioned we do have a pretty diverse agency.
So the last question I have for both of you really is that since Black Lives Movement started and almost woke up the industry, shook it up as it should have been, perhaps even before that, where would you like to see it, say, by Christmas time? What do you think should have happened by then so that we enter 2020 with some level of optimism? Who wants to go first? You want to go first, Meg?
Sure. So 2021.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not positive we're going to see, radical changes between now and then. I just hope the conversation stays top of mind, and that it remains something that brands and companies feel like they need to act on. It's not just, this is what we said we were going to do. Here's our response. Okay, what's the next thing that we're going to respond to? And I do think that comes from hiring. It has to stem from hiring. I need to be in a position where I have those voices around me. So I don't see that being a quick change, and maybe that's a good thing. I think a quick change may be a surface change. I think we need slow and steady, and we need it to be systemic, and we need it to be embedded, and that's where the change will come from.
So Yolanda, you have the last word. What do you think? Less than 100 days actually until 2021.
I agree. I don't expect a large leap. What I would love to see is the commitments people stay motivated, actions continue to happen. The biggest thing is I would love to see roadmaps built in terms of how the structures and systems are going to change, and inclusive in that is hiring within those higher positions.
Brilliant. Well, I have to say a huge thank you to both Meg and Yolanda for this really, really honest conversation. And for viewers who are watching, this is just one of the many conversations that are taking place. And to both Yolanda's and Meg's points, we hope to continue this conversation, not just till 2021, but even beyond that. And hopefully by then we would be actually almost assessing the kind of change, the kind of positive impact and change that hopefully the industry would have made. So till then, thank you both, and thank you viewers for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you.